Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Ever since COVID kicked in, a lot of things being done virtually. We're doing that right now. But I always wondered, is it just as effective when you're doing different modalities? Like if you're doing, let's say, hypnotherapy, is it just as effective if you're doing it, let's say, virtually or in person? Lots of questions today. She is a spiritual life coach. She is also a hypnotherapist and much more. And she's back with us. Rhea Maceris is on the program. Hey, Rhea, how are you?
I'm great, Steve. Thanks.
Welcome back. Yeah.
Yeah. Good to see
I,
you.
I've done everything virtual in terms of hypnotherapy. Let's see, Reiki, perfectly fine. But I wonder, can it be better in person? Is it the same? Is it just as good? Or if not better, when you do it virtually?
Great question. So, the power that I have found in doing my sessions virtually is that it allows more of a long-term consistency. So, for example, if someone is wanting to change a pattern or change who they are to find more of their truth, more of who they want to be, it takes a consistency, kind of like building a muscle, so to speak. You can't just make those movements initially. You need to practice and with time and consistency. So changing a habit, like for example, for someone who's 30 years old, they've probably been doing that habit for 30 years. So when I work with them long-term virtually, it gives us an opportunity to connect, and I can really serve them and reiterate what they want to change. Because oftentimes we need to hear it many times.
Do you do if you do hypnotherapy with somebody, do you do a recording?
Generally, they want to do that recording. Otherwise, I write it all down for them. So that's optional in the moment. Yeah.
Got it. And the only reason I brought that up is when you said just keep reinforcing it, reinforcing it.
Yes. Yes.
Is there something missing if you don't have the human connection when you do something virtually?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well, of course, you don't have that energetic closeness. However, I have found that most of my clients that I work with long term, I've actually met them in person. And that's when they get excited about our connection and what I have to offer. So they want to learn more. However, I've also worked with people virtually that I met virtually, and it worked perfectly fine. It's again, it comes down to your excitement level and your belief, and if you're ready to change. Which when people reach out, they generally have that "I'm ready" attitude, so it all happens easily and comfortably.
Yeah, I mean, if you want it bad enough, if you want to make that change,
Yes.
you could be a phone conversation. Yeah, they probably could be just as effective. I wonder about hypnotherapy, but if what are you doing in hypnotherapy? You are directing somebody to direct their own mind to do something. More times than when I had it done virtually, my eyes were closed. So the practitioner could have not even been there, could have been on a speakerphone, would have kind of been the same thing.
And that's generally it. Their eyes are closed, and I'm obviously watching them very closely. And I have a backup plan because life happens. Sometimes there can be, I've never had a disconnect, but if there were to be a disconnect with the internet for some reason, I have their cell phone right there if we need to, just as a backup.
You just brought back a memory because that did happen to me. I was doing hypnotherapy for forgiveness, of all things.
It's a
And
good one.
you know what? I didn't even know it existed. And when I was talking to a practitioner, he mentioned it, and I interpreted it as it was his specialty, and I misunderstood it, but was all good.
Yeah. Yeah.
He does everything with hypnotherapy, but call it a 45-minute connection. Probably lost contact at like 35 past the hour, and which was fine. I got what I needed. It was very impactful. But yeah, sometimes stuff happens. You can't control it, you know?
And I like that you bring up forgiveness because that comes up often with people because we've all had situations where we've been hurt or we feel someone has done something to us. And so I tend to believe and support that forgiveness is really for the person doing the forgiving, because otherwise we're carrying around this toxicity in our mind about what they did, what they said, and so then we're actually, and I kind of like the metaphor, we're letting them rent free in our head and
Mm-hmm.
have that power over us. So forgiveness is for the person. It doesn't mean you have to ever talk to them if you don't want to. It's obviously up to you, but
Yep.
it really is for your own energetic comfort and ease. And because at the end of the day, I think we all want inner peace. So if we're carrying around that toxicity, it's more difficult to find that inner peace.
Absolutely. Doesn't mean that you condone what they may have done.
Yes, yes.
And probably they don't care. They've already moved on. They did whatever they did. And
Yeah.
if you're marinating in it, you are allowing them to take up rent in your head
Yeah.
for free. And why let
Yeah.
them do that? You know,
And the marinating, that's a perfect metaphor as well.
you're giving them your
Because it's
power.
like a
Yeah.
bug bubbling, and it's kind of like we make a thing out of it. So we're holding on to this thing, and it becomes heavier and heavier the more we hold on to the idea of what he did or what she said or da da da, any of that, right? So
And
it's
once
more
it's
like clearing that in your own inner space. So then you can focus on you being your best instead of what John did down the road.
and then once it right, and then once it's gone, you've done the forgiveness, you've made
Yes.
peace, you've moved it on. It's like you look back and you're like, why did I ever even bother? Why did I? And we know why, but why? It could
So,
go on
so
for
when you
years.
do that session on forgiveness, how did that impact your life, or did it?
I felt it was impactful. I
Yeah.
do. I probably could do another session with it. I look back at that and say, yeah, you know what, maybe that would be good. But it definitely, I noticed afterwards, a definite change in my mindset. Um, that combined with other just standard hypnotherapy. And I knew what I wanted to do. I think I told you previously. I told the practitioner, just take me back to my childhood. Let's work on that. Where
Yes.
where it begins for just about all of us when we have to deal with stuff as adults, right?
Hmm. Well, and interesting too, if you think of it from the perspective of, again, if we're carrying around negative thoughts or ideas about someone did to us, it's keeping us in the victim mentality, for one thing, that someone has that power over us. And if we can let it go and forgive, we're almost creating a new space for our dreams and our desires to come in, because that is one of
Hmm.
the best ways to manifest what we want, is allowing a space for it. So if we're letting go and forgiving, we're allowing that space for manifesting what we truly want.
Thank you for saying that because it's
You're
so true.
welcome.
Yeah. As you think about it, let's, hypothetically, you pick somebody had a relationship, went bad, and now you're still
Yes.
thinking about it, marinating about it, and
Oh my gosh,
what you
yes. And
did.
we do that so well. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, I'd like to absolutely. And then to, a lot of people like to play the victim too, so that kind of plays into the whole thing.
Yes.
But while you're doing all of that and thinking about what they did and everything, well, the perfect person for you could be right here, but you're not going to experience that or allow them to come in because, like you said, there's no space because you
Yes.
gave your space up to somebody else. So you need to go away, get out of my space,
Which is
basically.
almost the irony of it, of them. We're upset with them, but then we're carrying them around with us. It's
Right.
almost kind of humorous.
It kind of is in a way. Yeah, I hate you, but
Yeah.
stay inside my head. I hate you, but don't go anywhere. Just hang out there. I'm gonna
Yeah,
and
just stay there.
yeah, and
Go
again, I
ahead and
don't
move
care.
in.
They don't care. They already did
Yeah,
whatever they did. They've already
yeah,
moved
yeah.
on more times than not. And if it's a situation where they are intentionally trying to take up space in your head, that's a different situation. That's another one that needs to be dealt with. So we talked about forgiveness as one thing that hypnotherapy can help us with. Now we know smoking, weight issues, depression, anxiety, those are pretty common. Forgiveness, I don't know that a lot of us know that hypnotherapy can help with that. How about some other situations that hypnotherapy, things that we might not realize that it could be impactful for?
Oh my goodness. So I've worked with one particular woman. I'm thinking of bringing COVID back into the situation, she lost 4 family members in 2 months' time. Her main support system, her mom, her dad, her aunt, and her grandma. Very, very, very heartbroken, as you can imagine. So I helped her find her inner strength, her inner wisdom, her inner independence, I guess you could call it as well, to cope and navigate her life and realize that she could handle all this. That was a lot. So I can work with people that are grieving, that are going through divorce, depression, even physical ailments, like we talked about the woman who had the heart attack. So really, I guess the best way to say it is I help people deal with their humanness and how to navigate the humanness. Because and the more that we're not listening to that negative inner talk part of the humanness, if we're caught in that arena, it's more difficult to allow our spiritual aspects that only want to love and support us. So it's like opening up to the more powerful part of who we are.
I would have to imagine that woman that suffered those 4 losses.
Oh my goodness, yes. I
That
was so glad I could be there for her.
can't even imagine. But once she deals with that, she's probably going to be in a totally different space, like you said, even spiritually, where she's open to more nice things coming into her life. Not to say that those people weren't wonderful, but just a different direction, but open to that different direction.
Well, I love that you said that because that's exactly what happened. She had these 4 people energetically supporting her and loving her. Nothing wrong with that. But as she cleared that space, referring to what we were talking about earlier, the man of her dreams came in. So she literally opened a space, and now I mean, I still see her. I'm kind of like what you would call an on-call life coach. They call me, oh, I need a reminder. So I'm kind of on call for many people. And she's one of the many that I still am available and I still support on a regular basis. So that's another advantage to the long term because life still happens, situations happen. So I help people find their inner trust that they can handle what's happening outside of them. And it's more than just hypnotherapy. I do physical alignments. I do offer past life regression if that's of interest. We do creativity. It's a holistic approach to who the person is. And again, it's very personalized. So we chat and I find how can I serve you the best? And that's how we begin.
I would love to talk about past life regression if we could.
Yes.
And if we could, we have some time. I do want to share something with you that when you talked about that woman, I totally forgot. And this is, I guess how traumas work. You just kind of put them aside. When I was 21, I had my father and 2 uncles all pass within 2 months of each other, maybe even a month. And I couldn't even tell you.
Brothers?
Not his brothers. So it would be my father passed, my mom's brother, and then my mom's sister's brother. Oof. And I could, like if you asked me, was it a month apart? I don't remember because it was a blur.
And how old were you?
21.
21. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And all I just remember is like another funeral. How is this possible?
Yeah.
Weirdly, they all worked for the same company. It was an aerospace company. They had different positions there, but yeah. So things like I forget until you mention, that woman. I forgot. So I think it's almost like things like that you put in your past.
Yes. Yes.
And certainly I probably could use hypnotherapy for my dad's passing, to be quite honest with you. Especially at 21, it's one of those things that, kind of lives with you. So
if you were to look back at that time, Steve, through the eyes of clearing a space, I mean, obviously I'm sorry that happened and not to make light of the pain that happened, but from that bigger picture, clearing that space, did you notice any shifts for you personally that came in after that at 21?
How do you mean? I want to make sure I answer accurately.
So like I was referring to my client who 4 people passed, and then suddenly the man of her dreams came in because metaphorically she made space. I was just curious if you look back at age 21, if anything like a particular job or situation came in for you after those three people passed, just for the fun of it.
Um, Give me 5 seconds. Let me get dates in my head.
Reflection time. Yeah.
And the answer is yes, because
Really?
yeah. And I don't know the timeline. I know my dad passed in July, and I want to say March, I got a job, and it was at 21, it was the big radio job that I always wanted since I was a kid, and I got it. And I was working there for 3 years prior, but I was made full time in March. My dad passed in July. I don't know when my uncles passed. It's a blur, but I think that was the thing that carried me through, because now I had other things to focus on, and it was a big job. I was almost, I was faking it. They made me at 21. They made me news and public service director of this big radio station. I'm like, what do I'm doing a morning show.
Well, you've got the greatest voice for it, so I get
Thanks. Thanks.
it.
Fake it till you make it. So I guess I did at that time. But I think that maybe the universe kind of twisted in a weird way. And also, I forgot about this. I don't want to make this about me. It's just you're bringing up the memories.
Well, this is great.
2 months after, what a year! 2 months after I got that job full time, there was a hostage situation that I was involved in, where a substitute teacher took students and teachers and staff hostage, and I had to play songs on the radio for him to release them one at a time. So
What?
and then we had all the passings in my life. Yeah. It and that
So it
he
was
did.
at the wait, so it was at the radio station or at the school where it happened?
He was at the school, and he was telling the police, "I want to hear the Rolling Stones. I want to hear this. I want to hear
Oh,
that."
that's her. Oh my
And they would relay it
God.
to me. CNN. Again, I'm 21. The camera's in my face, and don't. Hey, by the way, don't mess up, because he's got a gun to somebody's head. And every time
Wow.
either I read his epistle to the world or I played a song, he would let one go. It lasted about 10 hours, if not more. And I'll never forget, 8:43 p.m. He wanted to hear Styx, "Fooling Yourself." And there's a line in the song, "Take your best shot and don't blow it, blow it." And then he
Yeah.
took his life. And that's how it all ended. There were some injuries, but everybody was, okay. They came through fine. But
Wow.
I forgot about that, but that was that year. So I don't know if the universe does things for you. I was all focused on that. So I guess didn't have to focus so much on the passing pain of everything going on
Right,
there.
right.
Yeah.
Wow, you really did some growing up that year for
I
sure.
guess so. It's like and
A
then
shot of adrenaline.
fast forward to September, and that was that happened in May. I was asked to speak at a conference of broadcasters, won an award for the whole thing, and talking about hostage taking situations, and I'm 21, but yeah,
Wow.
but yeah,
Wow.
I don't know, probably some traumas laying around from that one, but let's go to past life regression.
Sure.
Yeah. I believe in it. I believe, there's reincarnation. I believe that, we could be dealing with stuff from a past life. What is one of the most profound past life regressions you did, where somebody had a realization that something happened and there was even some validation from that?
Great question. Yeah, so I worked with this man he comes in like every year. I have people that visit me annually. And so he comes in and I had been doing some regular hypnotherapy with him, and he came in this lifetime. He said, "I'm very intrigued about a past life regression." I said, "Sure." So he wanted to look at, I don't remember exactly what he wanted to look at. So I give them an option. They can go for a feeling they might want to bring more into their life, like empowerment, creativity from
Mm,
another lifetime, with the idea that they're going to visit these lifetimes and really see what it feels like to embody that feeling.
mm,
That's one option. Or the other option is they want to look at something that perhaps they have a pattern they keep repeating this lifetime, and they've tried so many regular earthly traditional therapeutic and nothing's changing it. So then we can go to lifetimes and get some information that way. So anyway, to answer your question, we were looking at something he wanted to change, a pattern, and he went to 3 different lifetimes. And one of them was, I'm guessing the actual date year, but it was something like 462 AD, or excuse me, BC. And then there were 2 other ones. And so with the beauty of the internet, he was actually able to Google situations from what he experienced in that 462 BC lifetime that coincided with what he saw and witnessed. Because when they're going to these different lifetimes, they're actually seeing and feeling and experiencing. And oftentimes, even though he was a man, he went to 2 different lifetimes as women and 1 as a man. So it's not even that we just go to different lifetimes where we are the same sex. We go to different lifetimes of that were where our soul was. I mean, my first personal past life regression, I was a large African American slave, and I was making bread, and I was literally touching the cabinets with my body. And I was not able to reach up into the cupboards because I actually felt what it felt like to be a big person. And I'm rather slim this lifetime, but that lifetime, I really felt that.
Wow.
And there's another whole story to that related to my lifetime, this lifetime. But anyway, with Google, you can actually confirm and get more evidence to actually solidify that, yes, that can happen, or that did happen.
Like, for example, let's say whatever lifetime that was, there was a type of bread or a type of oven or something like that, and you have a
Yes.
vivid description of it, then look it up on Google and you can actually confirm it.
Yes.
And how
Yes.
would you know that, some random oven, again, hypothetical here, but how would you even be aware of anything like that? You would,
Exactly. Yeah.
is if you have a feeling or affinity for a certain time period. I know for me, I don't know why, but the 1800s seems to resonate with me. I love watching any movies about that time, looking at pictures. There was photography in the latter part of the 1800s. I just like the simpler way of life with mixed with a little bit of technology, and just a vibe. Because of that, do you think it's possible that maybe I lived
Yeah.
yeah? Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes.
And you know
Yeah.
what? As weird as it may sound, I don't doubt it for a second. I feel it. I do.
Well, we can explore that. So I have another fun story I'd like to share. So the first time I went to Paris, well, the only time actually, I'd love to go again. I was actually walking down one of the streets, and I felt this church. I mean, I literally felt this church as if it was calling me, like I knew it. And I walked over to it. I recognized the church. I realized I had been there before. And I actually did a past life regression with myself through using another hypnotherapist who took me back to that time in Paris. And it confirmed what I saw, that I was actually a nun in that lifetime. And I knew the church. I knew where the aisles were. It was so amazing.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, okay. So for people that say, well, okay, well, maybe, when she was a teenager, they taught that in school and they, had a picture of a church or something. Okay.
sure.
But what you just said in terms of detail, you're inside the church. You know where the pews are. You know how it's all laid out. That's not going to happen,
You're not
flipping
going to
through.
read that in the history books.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Not with that
Yeah.
kind of detail. Not with that. And
Yes.
also you feeling like you were there.
Yes. Yes.
That's the
Very
different part.
familiar. Yes.
Wow. How I've heard it 2 ways. Some people say that I've spoken to that they don't do past life regressions virtually, and then others do. I don't know why. Are you okay doing past life regressions virtually?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I've done them. I'm comfortable with them.
Wow.
Yes.
What's a typical regression take in terms of time?
Well, it's generally they go to 2 or 3 lifetimes. We can do it in about an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's like for anybody that feels like I do, like the 1800s, when you go with your gut, like you have a gut feeling, my gut says,
Yes.
yeah, okay. Like I don't even question it. It's like, yeah, 1800s. What other times? I don't know. I don't get anything, but that I don't know why I do. I just feel like, there's something there. Like I am riveted when I see a picture. If I Google right now, 1800 photographs or whatever, I'm like, oh, wow, that's cool. I can't explain why. I
That's a
don't know.
good word for it, riveted. Yeah. Yeah.
I felt like,
I would imagine you've been there probably more than once, even if you're that intrigued by it.
oh, so that's even possible.
Well, yeah,
Hmm.
you could have been in the early and then into the latter. Who knows? I tend to believe we've lived many different lifetimes, more than most people even want to imagine.
So, final question on that. So, let's just say we'll pick the 1800s, and you say that you could have existed a number of times in that period. Would it be reasonable to think you were in the front half of the 1800s and maybe you passed away and then you came back again in the later part of the 1800s?
That's
Like,
what I was referring to as a possibility.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And how would that be? Would you, let's say you pass as an adult in the beginning of the century, and then would you have been born in the latter half?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Okay, so let's say you existed in the 1800s. Let's say you cross over from the 1700s to the 1800s, and you pass away in 1815.
Got it.
Okay, so you could exist in twice, let's just say, in the 1800s. How would you come back in the latter half or another part of the 1800s? How would that even happen? Would you be born? Like all of a sudden you were just born. It's 1860, you're born, but you really came back from the beginning of the 1800s.
So now
Wow.
we're getting into another very interesting dichotomy of what it's like when we pass over in between the lifetimes.
Yeah. And
Have
and
you
we
ever
don't
read Many Lives, Many Masters or heard of it by
say
Brian Morris?
no, never did. Never did.
Fascinating.
Okay.
He actually, oh gosh, this is a whole story, but he uses hypnosis as well, and he guides. He actually was working with this woman who went into. He was talking to her soul as she passed and what she experienced on the other side. That's maybe we
Wow.
could say that for next time. That's another whole story.
Oof. Seriously.
It's a really good one.
Yeah, and we're like over time now, but okay, I
Let
had
me
to get that
I
answer.
just want to recap on the
Please.
virtual sessions. So if someone's interested, I can do a free consult with you. We can talk about what you're wishing to get out of this, and then we would generally meet the same time each week to kind of reiterate and go over. And I actually give homework and I give you things to do on your own time, because this isn't just about meeting once a week. It's literally shifting and changing how you're looking at yourself, your inner talk, and how you're presenting in the world. So it's a whole process.
Your website, what's that, Rhea?
ImagineGetaways.com.
And if anybody's trying to imagine what that domain name URL means, you do getaways for people that go on retreats. We can dig into that, or you find it on the website as well. Fascinating talking with you today. Super cool stuff.
Same.
Yeah, learned a lot.
Look forward to it every week. Yay.
Absolutely. Yeah. All
All
right.
righty. You take good care.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down,
It's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.